Welcome to the Motherhood Alliance podcast, the podcast dedicated to empowering moms and families on their health and wellness journey. I'm Brittany Suttner.
And I'm Drea Brit. Together, we're here to explore holistic approaches that go beyond conventional medicine.
Each week, we dive into topics that matter most to you. Everything from nutrition and mental health to alternative therapies and natural living.
And whether you're a new mom navigating the early stages of parenthood or a seasoned pro looking for new ways to support your family's well-being, you're in the right place.
Even better, all of our guests are local small business owners who you can actually talk to and work with. You can learn more about today's guest and connect with hundreds of other health and wellness professionals through our informative and easy-to-use directory at motherhoodalliance.com.
Before we get started, keep in mind that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for personal healthcare advice. Please consult your healthcare provider before making any changes based on the podcast content.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Are you ready to help your family thrive? Let's get started. Hi, we are Britt and Drea from motherhoodalliance.com, and we are excited to welcome some guests that many of you have asked for more information about, ourselves. In many past episodes, we've referred to our history as prenatal and postpartum personal trainers through our business, Fit Moms on the Move, and how a career in that field ultimately led us to starting the Motherhood Alliance. In these 4 episodes, we dive into numerous topics related to navigating fitness before and after pregnancy, navigating the pressures of society, ab and pelvic floor function, how to have a fast postpartum recovery, what to do if you are years postpartum and your abs feel weak, and more. So without further ado, welcome to today's conversation with us, Drea and Britt. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our 4-episode series with Drea and I talking about our other business that we started 11 years ago, Fit Moms on the Move, and that has eventually led us to starting the Motherhood Alliance. But we oftentimes get questions about what do we do? What's our history? And so here we are sharing all of our deep knowledge from our prenatal and postpartum personal training experiences. And in this episode, you're going to want to get out a notebook because we're going to be talking about things that you may not have ever heard of before. In episode 1, we kind of perked some ears when we talked about how a woman's body changes during pregnancy and some common imbalances women may experience. So we're going to be diving into those, some big hitters, not all of them, but some big hitters in this episode. So let's start out by talking about how a woman's body commonly changes throughout pregnancy. So Drea, do you want to kind of just run through high level, just rattle off some things that change in a woman's body during pregnancy?
Oh, boy.
I know. It could be a list.
Yeah. Yeah. So, first of all, hormones are huge, right? So that is one of the main factors and driving factors behind the changes that the woman actually goes through. So Relaxin is big. It actually helps the joints get kind of lubricated, ready for birth. And obviously the point of that is to get the hips ready for birth, but those joints are actually all affected. So Relaxin is part of it. Our hips shift, the abs separate as our babies start to grow even more. The deep abdominals typically start to turn off near the end of pregnancy. So you might be able to connect with them earlier in pregnancy, but later on, it's just kind of like not there anymore.
Well, and honestly, hitting pause on that one for a second, I don't feel like the deep transverse abdominals is really talked about in the fitness industry all that much. So I'd be really curious on the percentage of people that really have good deep core control in the first place.
Right.
And then pregnancy, after your belly gets so stretched out, those muscles are just hanging on for dear life and they can't really function optimally unless you're intentional about it.
Right.
So I'd be curious.
Well, and then when we say people want to bounce back, it's like, you want to bounce back to what you didn't know before? Like all this stuff that if you learn this stuff and you really understand how much better you can be stronger and just better, it's more like bounce better. Maybe that's how we should say it.
You're really getting
better.
A clean slate as an adult into making sure that you have a deep, awesome foundation.
Yeah. So, again, it's relaxing, hip shifting. We got abs that separate, those deep abdominals. We got ribs that are spreading. So as baby grows, the lower part of our ribs actually kind of start to spread apart. We're going to talk about that. Breathing patterns change. The low back arches. So a lot of weight in the front, that low back pain is really prevalent. And then because of that weight is in the front of the body, the glutes squeeze and actually kind of turn off a little bit too, which is why it's important to strength train the glutes. And then of course we have pelvic floor pressure and kind of the aftermath of that as well. So that is like the run through of the main things that kind of happen to a woman's body as it progresses throughout pregnancy.
But it's a lot. Like if you go back and rewind that and really think through each one, our bodies are really shifting which muscles are being used, where our center of gravity is. Like you mentioned ribs spreading, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about rib flare in a little bit more depth, but just think about that. Your ribs are coming up. That changes your entire breathing pattern and how you're able to breathe.
And so are we expected to recover from pregnancy so fast? Like apparently society thinks that all these changes are just kind of like, meh. You're good
like they
after
all
a
just
few weeks.
melt back into place.
Like 6 weeks later, you're good to go. No problem. Nothing happened, right? No.
Yeah. So that leads to the ultimate question. After baby is born,
right,
what happens to your body?
Right.
Right. And so the truth is that common postpartum issues like leaking and belly pooch and a lot of other things that women struggle with, they're common. A lot of people have them.
Yes.
But they're not normal or ideal.
Right. Or ideal.
Women don't need to live like that their whole lives. Just because society says something is normal doesn't mean it has to be that way for you.
Exactly.
So, all right, well, let's jump into a handful of those big hitters. Let's start with Relaxin. You mentioned that this is a hormone that's present in the body, and the point of it is to help kind of relax those joints in preparation for birth. But a lot of people don't know that Relaxin stays in your system at a higher level all the way through breastfeeding.
Throughout breastfeeding. Yep.
Yeah. So why does this matter when it comes to fitness after baby?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, let's say you are still breastfeeding a year and a half after having your baby, that Relaxin still is in your system. So if you are like doing a lot of jumping, if you're doing a lot of high impact exercise and you're not paying attention, you can actually kind of cause yourself some injury or be at risk for joint issues. Or let's say you got running very quickly after you had your baby and you didn't do a readiness screen or you didn't think about it. I have seen women actually do this where they feel good running actually for a couple months or for maybe even a year. And then all of a sudden they are getting this low hip pain or they have some kind of joint issue and
or
they
even
don't understand
foot
why.
issues. Your feet are expanding from the Relaxin. And so, yep.
Yeah. So it's important to really consider that, especially if you're breastfeeding for a while. We do, like we've talked about before, we do have a readiness screen for running in high impact. So take advantage of that. That's a really good quick guide that you can do to really try to figure out if you're ready. For the high impact.
Another big one is ab separation. And so the technical term for this is, you can say it a couple different ways, diastasis recti or diastasis recti. You'll hear it said different ways. It's the same thing. But essentially it's the separation of the rectus abdominis muscle, like separating as baby grows. And
the six-pack muscle.
Yep, the six-pack muscle that you see on the outside. So if you really think about, they're next to each other prior to pregnancy, and then as baby grows, your belly gets pushed out, and so those muscles kind of separate, and that linea alba in the middle, that gets stretched a little bit. And so by the end of a full-term pregnancy, every woman has a diastasis. And so again, back to that main question, what happens after baby is born?
So when baby is born, it's not like these things just pop right back into place, right? You're still going to have that ab separation. I remember being shocked because I didn't know any of this stuff when I had my first kiddo. I couldn't even sit up in bed. And then I would like feel my stomach. I'd be like, what is this gap here? This isn't normal. What is this? And I had no idea. So it does eventually, for many women, it can heal on its own. You can actually have those two sides of the rectus abdominis coming back together over the 6 to 8 weeks after baby. However, for a lot of women too, it actually doesn't. And some of that, actually most of that, has to do with their movement and their breathing habits as well. A lot of this stuff that we are actually going to be talking about in this episode is all listed in our physical confidence course. We go into deep detail on each one of these different things, including diastasis recti too, and how to assess yourself and how to really use your breathing and your deep core connection to to heal that.
Yeah. And just to give people a high level insight into this is that you can actually see how wide your abdominals are by using your fingers. And so we walk you through that in that course. Like Drea said, it's kind of hard to do that without a video going right now since this is just audio, but you're going to see how wide your abdominals are separated, as well as how deep your fingers go and how squishy. And so there are multiple areas you should be looking at. And then in that course, we do walk you through what your results kind of mean. But just know that having a diastasis that is really squishy or significantly wide, like more than 2 finger gap, it can lead to a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
And so it really should be corrected. But most doctors are not testing for this. And unless you actually know what to do, a lot of women are walking around the rest of their lives with a wide diastasis.
Well, and honestly, diastasis is more of a symptom of poor breath and movement control, kind of like what I said before. It's a symptom of that. So if you continue to have that after baby is born, there are some things that you need to work on with your posture, with how you move, how you lift things. And again, this is all stuff that we talk about in that course too.
Mm-hmm. Let's move to the next one, rib flare. So this is where your ribs are coming up and out into an expanded position. Why is this important? Because other than maybe needing to get a different bra size from like a width of your bra, why does this really matter?
Right. I mean, and that's a symptom. So if you moved up like your rib cage actually got wider and you had to move to a different bra size, it's kind of your sign too.
Not cup size.
Not cup size, band size. So the thing about when you have baby in your belly and your ribs are pushed up, you feel like you really can't get some great breaths in, right? So you kind of have a really shallow breathing. You tend to breathe through your shoulders a little bit more. And then once baby does come out, for some women, that rib actually stays really wide. And so you're in a state of inhalation, which actually is a problem because you're kind of really honing in on that sympathetic nervous system. So when you're in a state of inhalation, it actually makes your body kind of panic in a way. Like
a state of stress.
Right, kind of in a state of stress. So I think of sympathetic nervous system as stress, SS, right? You want to hone in on that parasympathetic nervous system, which I think of as peace. That's just kind of how I remember those things. So when you're able to actually get a big breath in and able to let it out completely, and your rib cage is actually down where it's not stuck in that higher position, you're able to really focus in on that parasympathetic nervous system, which is going to help you with everything, right? It's just going to really help you have that more peaceful and not so stressful kind of feeling all the time.
Yeah. So if you think about somebody who has ribs that are functioning well, right, are in a good position, when you're breathing in and out, it's kind of like an umbrella opening and closing. And so when you're in pregnancy, it's almost like your umbrella is stuck in that open position. And now how are you supposed to breathe?
Yeah.
So this really should be corrected,
right,
and help to bring your ribs back down into the state where they can find some good movement. Another thing about rib flare, and this is a funny story about me, is that it can be one-sided as well. And that can lead to a whole ricochet of issues. So just think about if one side of your rib cage is in a normal or ideal state, and then the other side of your rib cage is flared up, that's gonna impact your entire kinetic chain on that side of your body. I mean, maybe your shoulder is raised a little bit, but maybe not. Maybe the impact goes down to your hip or down to your knee.
Right. And well, the reason why you had that is because the way you were holding your daughter.
Yeah. So I was constantly holding my daughter on my left hip because I'm right-handed.
Right.
And so it can be from pregnancy, but also can be from daily activities. If you drive and you always lean a certain way, you could be giving yourself one-sided rib flare, and therefore causing maybe some SI joint pain or low back pain on one side as well.
Right.
But Drea and I were learning about all of this stuff in our certifications. And so we decided to kind of take some pictures of ourselves. And I'm in my sports bra and she gets above me to take my picture and she goes, "Oh my gosh." And I just look at her, I'm like, "What's wrong with me?" She takes pictures. She shows me I have significant one-sided rib flare and I had no idea.
But your hips, you did have hip pain.
I did have one-sided SI joint pain.
And it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the good news is that, oh my gosh, my ribs, this is like bony part of my body. Can it be fixed? Yes, you can fix this. You can. And it comes with breathing. It does come with some exercises. Can't go into it too much right now because you really do need a video on this. But it is stuff that there are things that you can do to really start breathing optimally again.
Mm-hmm. That is one that very few people are talking about. And so definitely want to check yourself to see if you have one-sided or both-sided rib flare. Now, another heavy hitter is those deep core muscles. We keep kind of referencing these. These are called the transverse abdominal muscles. This is like a corset. So these muscles wrap all the way around your abdomen like a corset. There's upper, middle, and lower like levels of them, just meaning they go all the way from up by your rib cage down towards your pelvis. And these muscles are important during pregnancy and birth because they actually help you to push the baby out. But with most women, like we've talked to in our episodes before, this muscle tends to get turned off in pregnancy because it's our deepest muscle, so it gets stretched really far, and a lot of people don't have great TA or transverse abdominal strength going into pregnancy to begin with. And so if you can stay in touch with this muscle during pregnancy, it can be a game changer in your birth experience. But then if it does happen to turn off, how do you reactivate a muscle that you can't feel? That can be really tricky.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And if these deep TA muscles are not turned on, this is leading to a lot of low back issues. A lot of women with low back pain these muscles are turned off for them. So if we can get those reactivated and refiring, then that can be really beneficial in helping to work out some of the other kinks that you might be feeling in your kinetic chain.
So just a tip here too, if you're looking at doing core work, and Brittany alluded to this earlier too, is that core work isn't like your core is not just your six pack. Like that's not just what it is, right? So when you're doing core work, you really want to focus in on getting that deep core activated. That's also going to help with belly pooch too. People who are dealing with belly pooch, sometimes it's diastasis, sometimes it could be, extra adipose tissue or fat tissue. But I mean, if you work on your deep core, all good things will happen.
Yeah, and another big piece that we're actually not going to touch too much on in this episode, but Drea did tell you that in our Physical Confidence mini course, that course has 8 modules. One of the modules actually talks about breathing. Every single one of these pieces is impacted by the way you breathe. So we had said that during pregnancy, our breathing patterns tend to shift because our ribs get kind of stuck. So then the air has to go somewhere, right? And we create these new habits. So just know, man, I wish we could dive into it right now. We just don't have time for it. But the breathing piece is going to be super important too in helping you to correct a lot of these pieces. But another one that is really common, and once you learn it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Glute squeezing.
Yeah.
We mentioned this before, but as baby grows, our weight shifts, right? Or we have weight in the front, and so we tend to push our hips forward. We get more of that low back curve, and then our glutes kind of squeeze in to help combat that weight. And what we end up doing is we form a glute squeezing habit. And so baby is born, but we still squeeze our glutes.
I mean, just think about that, what we call it park posture, right? So if you're at the park with your kids or somewhere, like standing in a line somewhere, in my head, I see people do this all the time where they have their hips thrust forward, their butt is squeezed. They don't have a butt. It's very flat. So if you have a flat butt. Yep, mom butt. If you have that flat mom butt, the part of the problem could be that you do not have, your glutes are very inadequate in strength.
Well, and that you're just squeezing them.
Yep.
We talked with Meg Peters-Gebler. She had a 4-episode series, as well as Elisa Andrews. Those are both local physical therapists, pelvic floor physical therapists. And we had some great conversations with them around these types of things like leaking and pelvic floor and glute squeezing. So make sure you go back and listen to those episodes on more information on that as well. But the glute squeezing piece is just so interesting because once you are actually looking around in the world at other people, like a park, or if you're in line at a grocery store or something, you're going to notice so many people squeeze their butt muscles. But the problem is, just like with the pelvic floor, is once a muscle is squeezed and it's at its top capacity, kind of hitting its ceiling, right? It can't squeeze anymore. It
can't contract anymore, right?
And so now its function is lost. And what you really have to work on is the relaxing side of things. So that's pretty interesting. Stand up, see if you can relax yourself, change your brain to think about something else, and then bring it back and see if you're squeezing your glutes.
Have somebody take a picture of you randomly and see what you actually do, how you actually do stand, right?
And then with leaking, this is a really common thing in our society. Unfortunately, we're talking about urine leaking specifically. Leaking can be caused by a pelvic floor that is underactive or overactive.
Yeah, so overactive is when it's just too tight. So as you alluded to with the glutes, squeezing, it's the same thing with the pelvic floor, where if it's squeezed so tightly that you no longer can actually get any more strength out of it, that's when you have an overactive pelvic floor. Many of us do have overactive pelvic floors. We tend to be in a very stressed society where we're always tense. So thinking of that, our pelvic floor is reacting to the way we live our lifestyle, that tends to be the case. With underactive pelvic floors, that's when you have too loose or a very, very weak pelvic floor. A lot of people think that they have a underactive or a loose pelvic floor, just a weak pelvic floor because they're leaking. That's not necessarily the case, but that's when they literally can't lift it up. So the best thing that you can do is go see a pelvic floor therapist to get an individual assessment on where you're at, and then you can go from there on figuring out what the best next steps are for you. So you either need to strengthen and lengthen, or you need to relax and let it go for that overactive pelvic floor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ideal function, right, is the goal.
Right.
To be able to do both.
You should be able to that pelvic floor should naturally rise and fall with breathing, and it should naturally be able to contract and relax. So that's what the ultimate goal is.
So one thing, Drea, that I don't want people walking away from this episode with is feeling super, super overwhelmed or disheartened and feeling like their body is broken.
Yeah.
Right? These are common imbalances. It doesn't mean you have them, but you may. And especially if you're dealing with some sort of symptoms, it might be worth checking out.
Yeah. And actually you might be surprised that some symptoms like back pain or some kind of issues you have might be actually tied to this.
Right. And if you are not currently having symptoms, we just recommend everybody does a self-assessment, just because then you know where your foundation is at, because a lot of people will go years and then they don't realize one of these things is off, and then they have some setbacks or injuries because of it. But what encouragement would you have for a woman who feels really overwhelmed right now with wow, they just went through a lot. I've never heard of any of those things and I don't know where to start.
Right. Well, first of all, we want to encourage you that it's not too late. It's not too late, even if it's been 20 years since your last baby, right? I know Brittany, when she was teaching or being a personal trainer, she had met up with a woman who had diastasis and she had no idea. And it was probably...
She was in her mid-50s.
Yeah. It's been years and years since she had her baby.
I've always had low back pain.
Imagine that, So now Brittany was able to kind of educate and help her along with understanding what diastasis is and how to fix that. So it's not too late to really address all these issues. You might need a little extra time, a little extra help, more patience, and again, grace and flexibility, but it's not too late.
Yeah. And with our physical confidence mini course and self-assessment, just a little bit of understanding around that is that it's an 8 mini course module where we walk through these things as well as more. And we're really helping you feel educated and empowered, but then we also help you test yourself. And we give you this self-assessment sheet where you can circle green, yellow, red, depending on where you feel like you did within each assessment. It gives you a really good visual picture. And then we give you exercises to help start correcting some of these things. So that's kind of what that mini course is about. You can find it on our website if you're interested in learning more at fitmomsonthemove.com. But we do have one more episode coming up, and we are excited to dive into this one because postpartum recovery is a foggy time. Yes. Very, very foggy, not only from actually living in the experience of it, but what should you actually be doing for yourself and your body? And are there things that you can do during pregnancy to help set yourself up for an easier postpartum? These are some questions we're going to be answering in our next episode, as well as maybe things to focus on exercise-wise for each trimester. So if you have any friends who are trying to conceive or are currently pregnant, this next episode is definitely going to be for them. But I bet even if you're done with that season of life, you're going to learn some things from the next one too.
If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider leaving a rating or review or sharing it directly with a friend who could benefit from the information? We know that you're a busy mom or caregiver, and our goal is to make your life easier by bringing tips and tricks directly from experts into your earbuds. By sharing this episode with someone you love, you can play a critical role in helping to make their life easier as well. We appreciate your time and thank you for being a part of the Motherhood Alliance family.